If you're watching this video, it means you're interested in setting up the Derby database over the MySQL database, likely because you couldn't get a solid connection to the MySQL database due to firewall rules or something else. If you were able to connect to the MySQL database just fine, feel free to skip this video as you've already gone through these steps. Now, I'm going to take you through setting up the local instance of the database that you can call via your MMUULLEE application. First thing you're going to need to do is head to your student files. Inside of your student files, you're going to find a jars directory. And inside of the jars directory, you'll find a MuleSoft-training-services jar with some version at the end of it. What we need to do is we want to copy the name of this file and effectively get to this location in a terminal or command prompt window. So take a moment to open up command prompt or terminal and get to that location. Be sure to do a quick dir or ls to figure out what directories or files are currently available in your directory and ensure you're in the right location for the MuleSoft-training-services jar. To start this jar, we're going to type in java-jar and put in the MuleSoft Training Services name and hit enter. This is going to start up all of the local services, and most importantly to us right now, it's going to start up the local database instance. Now we should be able to connect to this database without having to leave our network. So let's go back inside of Studio and see if we can set this up. Inside of Studio, we will need to bring in the Derby client jar, as that's going to provide us with the ability to establish a connection to this Derby database. To do so, we'll flip back to our student files and drag the Derby client jar in. Once you've located the Derby client jar in your student files, drag that into the project. It'll ask you if you want to copy or link. Go ahead and copy the files. And at the bottom of your project, you're going to see the Derby client jar show up. Just right-click on this jar, go to Build Path, and add it to your build path. This will allow it to show up under Reference Libraries. If you still have the MySQL connector jar from the previous exercise, you're more than welcome to remove it, but you do at least need the Derby client jar to make this Derby database connection work. Now, instead of that old MySQL connection, we're going to set up a Derby database connection. To do this, we can click Create, type in Derby, and double-click on the Derby configuration. All right. Now that we've got this Derby database configuration ready to go, we are going to configure our data source via a Spring Bean, in which case we can create a new Spring Bean using the plus sign. Let's give the name of this bean data source DerbyDB and the ID as well, DerbyDB. For class, we're going to search for the class that's inside of that jar. Specifically, you want to find the standard data source, which you can see right here, org.nhydra.jdbc.standard, and hit OK. All right, now you've got a data source bean in place with the appropriate class that will act as the data source. Now there's just a couple sub-elements we need to add, or properties. We'll click the Add button and add our first property in. The first property is going to have a name of driver name. And the value for driver name is going to be org.apache.derby.jdbc.client_driver. Once you've got these settings in, you can hit Finish. And let's add in one final property. So we'll do Add again, Add property. And in this case, we're going to provide the JDBC URL. The name will be URL. And the value will be jdbc://derby:// the port of 1527 / memory: training, and hit Finish. Now you've defined a data source that should be capable of connecting to this Derby database. Let's go ahead and hit OK. And let's test the connection to make sure it works. And now, fairly quickly, you should receive test connection successful. And now you're set with the Derby database. You can hit OK and OK again, and you're ready to continue on. Now, we're going to continue playing the rest of the videos for setting up the database calls. Be aware you're likely to see MySQL in many of these different video captures, but your Derby database will provide the same data set back. The only thing to be aware of is while some of the MySQL column names and table names will show up in lowercase, Derby might prefer them to be in complete uppercase. So don't let that throw you off when looking at the differences between the two databases. But overall, the data should be the same, and this local version of the database should absolutely suffice for the use cases that we're going through. Now that we've validated the connection, let's hit OK and hit OK to our global configuration. Next, let's go ahead and select an operation. We'll drop down the operation box and choose Select. Scrolling down a little bit in the configuration, we can see an area where we're able to place in a query. Let's do a very basic query here where we ask to select all from, and the table name is going to be American. Now we hope to get results back from this, so let's go ahead and apply all changes. And once changes are applied, we can click inside of our canvas and run the project. It may also tell us that something has changed since our last save, and this is good. It's making sure that before we run, it's got everything in place. Let's hit OK to this save, and let the application attempt to start up. Now, similar to our last test, it should attempt to start up, and in the console in the bottom, you should be able to see some logs. Once it starts up successfully, let's see if we can make a request in Postman. Heading back into Postman, we should be at our same endpoint, localhost 8081/flights. Let's go ahead and send another request in. All right, now this time our results look significantly different. We've got a bunch of strange text and characters throughout. Soon, we'll learn why this text is so scrambled and how it's effectively returning a raw representation of the Java object back to us. We'll soon learn how to transform this into a cleaner form. But for now, we're hitting the endpoint, hitting the database. Let's make sure we can stop the application in Studio. Back in Studio, we'll right-click inside of our canvas and stop the project.